Well, hello. And today I want to read a verse from 1 Kings chapter 9, verses 11 and 12, which is from the life of Elijah just after he had met with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. He'd fled from Jezebel and he'd gone into the wilderness. Now he was on the mountain. He'd gone into a cave. And he came out of the cave. As Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by. And a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the sound of a gentle whisper, or as the King James Version puts it, a still small voice. The most powerful moment of our lives is when we hear the gentle whisper of the Holy Spirit communicating the deepest thoughts of God. There may be a lot of noise and bustle preceding it, but it is all a preparation for hearing God speak in his gentle whisper. Earthquakes, winds, and fire are impressive, but God is not in them, even though he sent them. God is in the still small voice. That inner stillness is the moment before the sun rises in our hearts and we become conscious of God. The work of the Holy Spirit is always the opposite of the ways of man. This is why so little is known about him, despite the fact that he is omnipresent and all-powerful. Human beings are the opposite. Noisy, boastful, but weak and restricted on every side. Isaiah pleaded with Israel to look to God. And he said this, only in returning to me and resting in me will you be saved. In quietness and confidence is your strength. That's what God said to Israel through Isaiah the prophet. But Israel loved the business of making alliances with Egypt, trusting in their armies. It was the fear of death that had suddenly gripped Elijah and drowned out the still small voice. That's why he'd fled from Jezebel, the fear of death, and he lost the still small voice. He had seen God work in power on Mount Carmel, but even the drama of those events had caused Elijah to look to impressive things rather than to the inner whisper. The person who knows the still small voice is invincible. From that voice and from that voice alone flows the indomitable power of God. Nothing can stand against the whisper of God. Death fled when Jesus called Lazarus. Sin, Satan, and hell came crashing down when Jesus cried, "It is finished." To hear the Spirit breathe through the word is to tap into the power that created an infinite universe. To overhear this quiet whisper is to dip one's heart into the redeeming love that healed a broken world. There is no more magnificent activity than to quieten one's heart and read the word with rapt inner attention to the Spirit of God, to that quiet voice whispering in us. God bless you.